For a long time, self-driving cars, they felt like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But what if we've been thinking about it all wrong? What if the real goal isn't just to build a self-driving car, but to create a fundamentally better driver? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're talking about Waymo, a company that's making a pretty bold claim that they've done just that.
So you got to ask the big question right up front. Why? Why do we even need self-driving cars? I mean, is this whole thing just about kicking back and watching a movie on your commute? Or is there something bigger, something more urgent at play here?
Well, the answer, it really boils down to one single, kind of shocking number, 94%. Let that sink in. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, 94% of all car crashes are caused by us, by human error.
Okay, so we have this massive number, 94%. But what does that actually mean in the real world? It means we're looking at a huge problem with the way we drive.
The reality is, it's pretty grim. We're talking about almost 1.2 million people losing their lives in car crashes around the world every single year. Here in the US, that was over 42,000 people in 2022 alone. And you know what one of the biggest culprits is? Something we can probably all relate to, just not paying attention. A quick glance at a phone, getting lost in thought, it's human nature, but it's also clear that the way things are now just isn't sustainable.
And this is exactly the problem that Waymo set out to tackle. But their whole approach was different. They weren't just trying to add some cool new features to a car. Nope, they decided to build a whole new kind of driver, right from scratch.
And how they talk about it is really important. They don't call it a self-driving mode or a feature. They call it the Waymo driver. And the whole point of this driver is to get rid of all those human mistakes that lead to crashes. Think about it. It never gets tired, it never gets drunk, and it definitely doesn't get distracted by a text.
Now, this is a super important point to get right. What Waymo is doing is not the same as those driver assist systems you might have in your car right now. You know, the ones that help you stay in your lane or brake automatically. With those, you still have to be paying attention, ready to grab the wheel. Waymo is different. It's fully autonomous. From the moment it picks you up to the moment it drops you off, it's in charge. You're literally just a passenger along for the ride.
Okay, so how on earth does this thing actually work? I mean, city streets are pure chaos, right? People, bikes, other cars, it seems impossible. But it all breaks down into a really smart four-step loop that's happening constantly.
First, it starts with a solid foundation. Waymo builds these incredibly detailed maps of an area, so it knows every curb, every lane, every stop sign. Then, using its sensors, it sees everything that's moving around it, a full 360-degree view. Next, and this is the really clever part, it predicts what everyone else on the road is about to do. Is that cyclist going to swerve? Is that car going to pull out? And only after all that, it plans the safest possible move. And it does this whole cycle, map, see, predict, plan, over and over again, thousands of times a second.
That seeing part is absolutely critical. And we're not just talking about a camera on the dashboard. The Waymo driver has this whole array of sensors that work together to give it, well, basically superhuman senses.
Yeah, you can think of it like a team of experts. You've got LiDAR, which is like the surveyor shooting out lasers to create a perfect 3D picture of everything, day or night. Then you have the cameras, which provide all the high-res detail and color. They're the ones spotting traffic lights and construction signs. And finally, you've got radar, which is like the all-weather pro that can see right through rain, fog, whatever. When you put all that information together, you get a view of the world that's way more complete than anything our own eyes can manage.
So having these superhuman senses is cool and all, but how do you prove you can actually trust them with your life? Well, that brings us to Waymo's testing process. And honestly, the scale of it is just mind-blowing.
Waymo makes this huge claim, right? The world's most experienced driver. And you might think, how is that even possible? Well, they're not talking about experience in terms of years. They're talking about it in a way no human could ever compete with: sheer volume of miles and challenging situations.
It all starts on real streets. We're talking millions of miles driven out there in the messy, unpredictable real world.
But that's just a drop in the bucket. In the virtual world and simulation, it's driven billions of miles. This is where it gets to practice all the crazy, once-in-a-lifetime dangerous scenarios over and over again until it gets them perfectly right.
And to top it all off, they run the system through more than 40,000 specific, structured tests on their private test tracks. This is where they prove it works in a totally safe and controlled way before it ever hits the public roads.
Okay, but what if something goes wrong? What if a computer glitches out? This is where redundancy comes in. The car is basically built with a backup for everything. A second computer, a backup braking system, a backup steering system, even extra power. The entire design is focused on one goal if things go sideways: bring the car to a safe, complete stop.
So after all that testing, all those miles, what's the payoff? Well, here it is. The data shows that when you compare it to human drivers in the exact same areas, the Waymo driver is involved in 78% fewer crashes that cause an injury. That's a huge number, and it gets right back to that why we talked about at the start.
So this whole thing, all this incredible tech, isn't something you're going to go out and buy at a dealership. It's a service. It's officially moved out of the lab and into the real world as a ride-hailing service, like a taxi or an Uber.
And we're not talking about some far-off future. This is happening right now. You can get a fully driverless ride with Waymo today in places like LA, Phoenix, and San Francisco. You literally just pull out your phone, open an app, and a car shows up, with nobody behind the wheel.
And you know, the impact here is so much bigger than just safety numbers. Take this quote from Ron, a rider in Phoenix who's blind. He talks about how it gives him the same freedom and independence to just go that everyone else has. When you hear that, you realize this isn't just about convenience. It's about changing people's lives.
So that leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Is this the future of how we get around? By focusing on building a better driver, not just a smarter car, Waymo is definitely making a strong argument. It really points to a future that could be a whole lot safer, way more accessible for everyone, and just completely different from what we know today.